Could you maybe break out a couple different examples of what a dog presented to you and how you came to understand what it was that that dog needed?
Um, I think the first part would be to start off really early in my career when I started showing for other people. And I had had dogs my whole life. Of course, most of us have had a dog, but I wasn't the caretakers of those dogs. And so when I had my own group of dogs, they were my first trainers. And my very first bull mastiff, she was rock solid. I could go anywhere in any ring and do anything with her, and she was fine. And every now and then she'd give me a look and I would think, something's up, but I never really understood what she was trying to say. My next dog, before I started showing other people's dogs, was a completely different temperament. And these are bull mastiffs, completely different temperament. She would look at me and I could tell she needed me. And I could tell that she wasn't going to be overly confident in the show ring. And I just had to walk her through the stages, but I could tell by looking at her, I could tell by watching her behavior. And the days that I saw her struggle, I would have to attune to everything around me why she was struggling, because I didn't see it of what she may have had an issue with. So getting her through that, she was one of my biggest trainers because she was a softer bull mastiff. She was a mommy's girl. And after her, when I started moving out into other people's dogs and I started dealing with different breeds, and I started realizing certain cues that they would do that if you weren't really worried about the dog, you wouldn't have picked up on. And for me in the beginning, it was all about the dogs. It was all about caring for them, making it a happy experience. And how do I do that? So one of the dogs that I had dealt with very early on was a dog that wasn't used to being crated a lot. And he was a great show dog. He did everything I asked. He was one of those easy ones. And on the third day of showing at an indoor dog show that was very busy, and he was crated quite a bit there because I had quite a few dogs. At the end of the day, he was looking at me and I was looking at him, and he had something he'd never had before, and it was a glaze over the eyes. And I knew he was healthy. I knew he was fine. He wasn't sick, but something was happening and I didn't know what. And I took him out and I took him for a really long walk, and I found an area where I could throw some balls for him. And probably about 20 minutes later, I came back and I put him back in the crate and the glaze was gone. And I realized at that moment, he didn't want a handler. He needed a friend, and he needed somebody to kind of release his tension. And he was one of my biggest training tools, where I learned how much those eyes meant. And then I thought back to my dogs, where all the things that they were telling me, I didn't pay attention to. And maybe it was something because I was so desperate to win and I wanted to win that I wasn't paying attention to what the dog was asking. So in early on, I started realizing how much the dogs tell you by how they look at you, how they react to you. And the goal for me always from that moment forward was, you know what? I know these dogs have mommyitis, but I'm going to replace mom and I'm going to be better than mom. So that's the behavior I wanted. I wanted dogs pulling owners to me. I wanted the dogs so connected with me that that they never looked back at the owners. And for the most part, that was the attitude I took from there on forward, was to always make sure that I could read the dog, figure out what the dog needed, and become the most important thing in that dog's life over the owners. And from there on forward, that was my job, and that's what I had to do. So in summary of all the dogs since him and my own, that's all I have ever learned how to do, was to make sure. And if I couldn't figure it out in the 2 minutes I had, if it was a dog that wasn't staying with me, I knew I could also figure it out in the 2 minutes that I had in the ring. And be able to actually see the dog's behavior, how they were responding to the stress, how they were responding to the dogs being taken away from the owner. And I individually um, made packages for each of those dogs. In other words, the best for whatever the accomplishments that we wanted to achieve, I literally built the program for each one. And over the years, that was a lot of dogs, but I've learned they'll tell you what they need, and you have to learn how to listen. You have to find a way to be the one that can communicate with them.
I really love what you're saying. It's so important to be able to make sure that a dog's basic needs are met before you try to train them. So, for instance, where you were able to see with the dog with the eyes that were glazed over, that dog was stressed, and it would have been um, to attempt to train a dog like that that isn't feeling safe or
Yes.
relaxed. It's you're
Hmm.
just not setting yourself up for success. So
Absolutely.
being able to look at a dog like you did and to be able to first start off, are all their basic needs being met? Has does this dog feel safe? Um, for instance, if a dog has just walked into a building and the dog is looking very, nervous and agitated before you start training, maybe what this dog needs is a walk around the building. So I
Hmm.
think that that's just a great thing that you bring everyone's attention to is before you ever train a dog to observe the dog. What is its body language telling you? And then once it's based on the cues that you get from their body language, when they start to relax and then appear more receptive, now you're ready to do some training.
Right.